So as I start this, just to sort of let you know, I do know Dr. Baxley. So that's a real advantage here, because I have worked with Dr. Baxley at the University of Texas at Arlington. She, the bum, decided to retire last year, and so I don't have a chance to work with her as much as I used to, but it has been my pleasure to get to know her and to have a sense of how she brings this idea of mentoring alive and how I've seen her do this, and it's really pretty cool. So I guess the first thing is, I think this is a great statement, mentoring relationships. So remember, and that's important. Mentoring is a relationship. It's not a one-sided kind of thing. It is absolutely a relationship. And it does provide meaning, and it gives that structure for us nurturing each other. And it gives us, through that mentoring process, through that relationship, attributes that we can use to influence healthcare absolutely around the world. And this is from a book by Baxley, Ibatayo, and Bond. And I want to get the title of their book straight, because this is an excellent book. Keep moving. I'm so sorry. But this is from Mentoring Today's Nurses, A Global Perspective for Success. Isn't that a nice way of thinking about it? Because they think about global in two different ways, and we'll talk about that. And this book was published by Sigma Theta Tau International, our National Honor Society for Nursing, and was one of their premier books the year that this book was published by Sigma. The other thing that I want to tell you about those three authors, as we look at some definitions that these authors put forth in their book, is that Baxley, Ibatayo, and Bond are in many ways the lived example of a mentoring relationship. Dr. Baxley is a mentor and has been a mentee or a protege. Dr. Ibatayo, a little younger than Dr. Baxley, has also been mentored and is furthering her mentoring relationships as she has become a faculty member, but she was mentored as a student in the doctoral program by Dr. Bond. Dr. Bond is, in many ways, my epitome and my poster woman of a very strong professional mentor. I've had the pleasure of working with her. She is a professor emeritus at our university, and once again, she lives this mentoring idea. She mentored Dr. Baxley and Dr. Ibatayo, and part of that mentoring was being an author with them on a book. And that's really kind of a cool way of looking at how we work together in that mentoring process. That was just one example of how they've worked together. So when we look at how these three women define mentoring, when they looked at the book that they wrote, and this is, again, very true to the kind of work they have done, they look at global mentoring as a reciprocal, mutually beneficial relationship, and that has to be it. It has to be a two-way street. How many of you are in a mentoring relationship? That is wonderful. Okay, now keep your hands up. How many of you have told your mentor? How many of you are mentors? How many of you are mentees or proteges? Those of you that are proteges, do your mentors know that they're a mentor? Excellent. You would be amazed how many times I've asked that question, and the mentor and the protege have been sitting right next to each other. And when I say, so protege, does your mentor know that they're their mentor? And they'll say, no, because the mentor goes, really? How did that happen? You know, so this isn't something you keep under your hat. This is an overt relationship. Now, this relationship between these two parties is challenged, and it challenges and is based on trust. It's based on communication. It's based on respect. but it's also influenced by culture. And we think about culture, we're not just talking about culture in the traditional global sense. When you think about globally in a very traditional sense, you think about different countries, different maybe ethnic cultures, right? But we're also thinking, not only are we thinking about what we bring as our own individual culture, but what we bring from our environment. What about our generational culture? So there are so many pieces of this global culture that Baxley, Ibatayo, and Bond have included in this definition that I think we want to think about global, very globally, and not just think about it in terms of where you come from in a part of the world. As we identified, mentoring is an interpersonal process, and you account for those differences. And mentoring is about, at its core, guidance. And that guidance comes generally from a mentor working with that mentee or with that protege. Does this stuff ring true? Yeah? This is the part where you get to talk to me. Yeah, thank you. I was all worried there for a minute. When you think about mentoring, there are a couple of things to think about, and I like the way Dr. Baxley, and from here on I'm just going to call her Susan because she's been Susan to me for years, but what Susan set up here, and I think it's really great, and she contrasted what we might think with what might be some of the realities of mentoring. So let's look at what we might think first. So we might think that, and this is what once again, this is where I want you to kind of talk to me about. So we might think that mentoring is important. Yay or nay? Yay. Okay. We might think that it's a mystical relationship. Yay or nay? Okay, I say, that's great. I can say, maybe yes. Jennifer's not so sure it's necessarily mystical, but it certainly is a relationship. But what I will say, and I feel very strongly about this, is mentoring doesn't just happen. It is an intentional process, which is why when you're sitting beside your mentor, there shouldn't ever be a, really? That should never happen. Because this is a relationship. It's an overt. It's not mystical, but I will say that when you're in an effective mentoring relationship, it's pretty magical. There's a difference there, at least in my mind, because things happen in a different way than you might have expected them, and to me that's kind of magical. Mentors have time, energy, and desire to serve as mentor. Yay or nay? If they don't have, that was a great comment. If they don't have the time, they make the commitment. They make the time to do that. And so I think that's a good point. And once a mentor, you no longer need mentoring. What do you think? No. What I would say is how many of you have had more than one mentor? Great. Because I think what happens is as we move, as we develop our career, and we develop different relationships, because remember, when you enter a mentoring relationship, you have a reason, right? There's something you want to accomplish. There's someone that you know can help you accomplish that. And so you want to work with them in that relationship and make that happen. So as a result, as your career changes and as your career moves, different people can mentor you to achieve those things that you want to develop. We were just chatting before the beginning of the session, and Mary Jo, our monitor, is being mentored by Jennifer, our moderator, in developing writing skills. Jennifer's helping Mary Jo. Is that not the coolest thing? I mean, look at how close they are sitting together. And they're at the same conference, but they're working together. Mary Jo has something that she wants to be increasingly effective at. Jennifer has done that. She has she has published. She's published more than once. And Jennifer was mentored by 3 other individuals that helped her build those skills. So what Jennifer learned was she was being mentored. What's she doing? Passing it on. And I know Mary Jo personally, so I know that she'll be passing it on. It's just too cool. And that's what's really special about that. But there are also some realities of mentoring and what it is. Mentoring means different things to different people. Absolutely. Absolutely. And as a result, then, there are going to be different expectations in different mentoring relationships. The reality, and a very important reality, is that in a mentoring relationship, both the mentor, but importantly the mentee or the protege, have to be able to identify their needs and help the mentor find a way to get those met. Because it isn't the protege coming out and going, this is what I need. They are saying, these are the kinds of things I need. This is what I think you can bring to me. Can we work together? Mentoring is labor intensive. Those of you that are mentors in the room, you agree? I see some heads going, yes. It is often invisible and it's often unrewarded. So reflect back on your last employee evaluation. How many of you in your employee evaluation have mentoring as one of the criteria? Invisible. Absolutely. And I think this last piece of reality is very, very important. One of our most critical times of need in terms of mentoring is when we're moving to a new status. When we say new status, what we're really talking about is you're changing jobs, you're moving into a new skill set, whether it be writing or whether it be a new position or whatever. If you were at the general session earlier today, that was one of the big things that I heard over and over and over from the speaker on leadership, is that as you change what you're doing in an organization, and she was talking about leadership and moving up in an organization, you need mentoring in order to do that. It's one of the most valuable things you can achieve or be involved in. So when you look at this global mentoring process, and I know it's a little bit busy. Let's see if I can. Okay, that wasn't it. Oh yeah, it is. There it is. Okay. All right. So when you think about global mentoring, and I think that's what I like about this model that was developed by Baxley and Ibatayo. So you've got this whole process clearly looking at the mentor and the protege. And I know this is a little hard to read, but there's knowledge, personal and emotional support, advancement, expertise, protection, loyalty, maybe a little prestige, and then that idea of role modeling. But all the way around that process are things like communication, challenge, the idea that any mentoring relationship is mutually beneficial. Because otherwise, someone's going to come out of that relationship dissatisfied or didn't get what they really needed from that relationship. It's a two-way street. Respect, trust, and we talked about some of those cultural influences. Now, some of the work that Baxley, Ibatayo, and Bond have done has been looking at mentoring students, but also faculty mentoring faculty. But they've also done, so that's where most of their research work has been done. But when we look about how the science of nursing plays into that, and that makes sense because these are active researchers, so they're going to think science of nursing when they think about mentoring as well. You think about things like empowerment. You think about improvement, whether or not it's formal versus informal, that it's a cascading relationship. So I think that's a nice model. And those of you that have done master's and doctoral works, Remember the models? Some of you had to draw your models. Yeah, I'm not a model person, but this one speaks to me. So when you're looking for a mentor, how do you find a mentor? Because remember, what we're talking about in this session is mentoring, how to get one and how to be one. So let's start, and we're going to switch back and forth constantly through as we talk about this. So when you're looking for a mentor, and in order to find a mentor, there are some very specific things you need to think about. Because remember, this is an intentional process. This isn't magical. The end point might be magical, but it's not mystical. It isn't something that just comes out of the clouds for you. So the first thing you have to identify for yourself when you're looking for a mentor is, what do you want to accomplish? How frustrating is it when someone walks up to you and says, I want to be a better nurse? What's your next question? Tell me what you mean by that. Tell me what that means to you. Tell me what kinds of things you're thinking about. Because if you can't define that and if you can't describe that, it's almost impossible to hit that target. You want to hit that target in this relationship. Do you want someone who's just like you? Sometimes. Why sometimes?
I think because they follow your thought process and where you're at in your journey.
Say that one more time for all of us.
So I think that they kind of know where your thought process is, where you are in your journey, and they can relate to you better. But sometimes it is good to have a polar opposite because they come at it from a different perspective. From my standpoint now, my current mentor is a lot like me. So it's good to see where she is, but she can also relate to where I'm at now.
Okay. So maybe some things that might be like and some things that are not like. So that would, what else? What are those who said, I heard some of you say no, not like me. Oh yeah, now we got the microphone, you get chicken.
If they're just like me, then I may not get what I need from them. They need to, and what I mean by that is, I might need them to be at a different point in their career or a different point in their life to be able to give me those experiences for future, where I'm trying to go.
And I think that's a great point. And it isn't just about that they're where I'm not, but I think the other piece is when we work with someone in a mentoring relationship who isn't like us, there's a different perspective, a different way of thinking, a different way of knowing. And that's where working with someone from a different generation, working with someone, I'm getting old. And so maybe my next mentor needs to be someone who's not old. Not that I'm old, but you know what I mean? Maybe my next mentor needs to be someone who let's say that I decided that it was time for me to finally figure out how to master social media. I'm pretty sure that I'm not going to look for someone in their 80s to do that with me, even though I know a lot of 80-year-olds that are very, very good at it. But I might want to do that with someone who really gets that and really knows how to do that. And they can push me and they can encourage me to learn things in different ways. As you enter this relationship, do you know who you are? Do you know what your strengths and areas for growth are? What word did I not use there that usually goes with strengths? Weaknesses. Why do you think I didn't use the word weaknesses? Crawl into my head and figure that out. You're trying to grow. The whole idea behind this is growth. And so if you understand where your areas for growth are, not your weaknesses, but where can you grow? Where do you want to be? You bring so much to this table. when in a mentoring relationship, when you're the protege or the mentee. You bring so much to the table, but you have to understand where you are, what you bring, and where you want to go, and a little bit of a sense of how you want to go. For some of you, you're going to choose, you have a good understanding of yourself. And one of those understanding things you may know is when I work with someone and I know that I'm going to be getting some very good feedback, I want to be sure that I am working with someone who is more on a supportive side, as opposed to someone might say, I just want the feedback. Don't, it's like, I can take it. Just tell me what I need to know. I was working with, I've been teaching for a long time, and I remember working with a student once, and it was early in my career, and it wasn't a mentoring relationship, but I think the example holds. I was trying to let her know that she'd failed the course. So I'm talking to her and I'm couching my words. I know you had some difficulty in the course and your experience in the course wasn't as positive as you wanted it to be. And as a result, the evaluation isn't as strong as you would like to be. And she held up her hand and she said, "Are you telling me I failed?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "It's okay to just tell me that, and we'll get to the rest of it later." Because I'm just trying to let her down on the marshmallow. And what I needed to do is just say, "Here, take the marshmallow, now let's talk about it." And you just have to know what's the best way for you to do that. And if you've chosen your mentor well, you know the kind of feedback they give, you know the kind of communication style they have. I think the other thing is, and this is a great question, I think, for everyone, does your organization have a mentoring program? Because we're thinking more here about professional mentorship. So how many of you are in an organization that has a mentoring program? So only a few hands, but there are some hands. Of those who do have a mentoring program, is it, first off, is it a required program or is it voluntary? Required? No. How many are required? Great. Voluntary? All right. Now here's the second question. Those of you voluntary. Second question is, did you choose your mentor or were you assigned a mentor? How many of you chose your mentor? Fewer hands. How many of you were assigned a mentor? Yeah, this is one of the things that is happening in the workplace a little bit more than if you're a mentoring purist, you would like that to happen. Because the organization says we value what happens in a relationship like this. So they've already said, okay, we value this. However, through the assignment of a mentor, as opposed to the mentee being able to choose that individual, that relationship may struggle. Because the more you can choose your mentor, or if you can't choose your mentor, it's important to have that conversation when you're first starting to work together. I've never been assigned a mentor. I have been assigned a mentee. It didn't work. It just wasn't a good relationship because we couldn't, it wasn't from lack of time or energy, it's just that we weren't on the same page. And we struggled so badly. And I felt bad as the mentor, the assigned mentor, because I kept looking for resources that I thought could really help my mentee, but that meant my mentee had to negotiate and work with more people than me, and she found that overwhelming. So it just didn't work out the way we had wanted it to. Now the good thing is, she didn't scratch my car, she didn't flatten my tires. Nothing bad happened, and we ended up working together in a different way, and I ended up kind of working with her as a sounding board. We didn't really develop that mentoring relationship, but at least she knew that if she needed someone that she could vent to, that my office was a safe office and it wasn't going to go outside that door. And so that's a mentoring behavior, even though we didn't have a strong mentoring relationship. And I talk a lot about mentoring behaviors being different from a mentoring relationship. The other thing is that once you have, as the protege or the mentee, once you have identified that mentor and you've started that relationship, it's important that you, as well as your mentor, understand that you're going to go through some stages. And these are very common stages in this relationship. So the first stage that a protege may go through is more of, kind of finding their way, and is more of a recipient. Now, this is generally a fairly short stage. It's not very long, because this is getting to know you. That song. I don't sing. But think about how the protege is more passive at the very beginning than you ever want that protege or their mentee to be at the end. Because if the protege or the mentee remains passive, you're not going to get what you need. Because this isn't, again, it's a relationship, it's a dyad. After that, they're going to be seeking guidance, but they may not be offering a lot of assistance, help, or whatever to the mentor. Generally, when you get into a mentoring relationship, how many of you as mentors have grown from that relationship? Yeah. And so that's part of the trade-off that you do in this relationship, that it isn't just about someone being passive and taking everything they can from you, but the mentor gets something out of this as well. That then moves into the really fun part of the relationship, and that's the give and take. It's very active. The mentor gives and takes, the mentee gives and takes. Because they're both learning. They're both getting something out of the relationship. I have learned from a couple of my mentees, I have learned incredible things. And it was so fun to be able to do that. Because importantly, it's each of these individuals, the mentor and the mentee, have to get what they want and they have to get what they need in order for this to be a positive relationship. Does that ring true? Does it make sense? Great. So think about what a mentor can do for you. Which of these do you especially like? Shout them out. Exploring options. Yeah. That is the first one on the list. Let's go with that one. One of the great things about this relationship is the opportunity to have a sounding board, to think things out. Have you ever had that experience when you thought about something in your head and it was great? This was the best idea you've ever had. It was a great solution to something you were doing. You knew this was the next thing you wanted to do. And then when you started to say it and talk it out, it didn't sound as good as it did in your head. And that's a wonderful part. Should I do this or should I do that? And remember that there's a part in this relationship, a big part of this relationship, where your mentor is listening. They're listening. They are actively listening. Tell me more about that. Have you thought about what if this happens? If all else fails, this is my favorite. If that doesn't work, What's your next plan? Because a lot of times when we come up with something that we're going to do, we are so sure it's going to work. It's great. This is going to work just perfectly. And we all agree you're going to do it. We're ready to go. You implement it, and it didn't work. So now what do? You go back to your mentor, you talk it over, you got to have a plan B. And sometimes frequently your mentor is going to help you say, how do you know if it's going to work? What are you going to do if it doesn't work? You know, after you've gone through the box of tissues on the desk, because you remember you were invested in whatever you were doing. So whatever, you wrote the article and you got it back from the editor of the journal. And the reviewers said, we would like revisions. Now, remember, when you sent it in, this was the best thing ever written. It was good. It was really good. Even your mentor said, this is a good article. Now, your mentor probably also said, expect that you're going to get some suggestions for revision. You might not have heard that. And the good mentor never says, I told you so. I knew that was going to happen. No, the good mentor says, but they liked the article. They liked your major ideas. Let's take a look at these. Let's see. And you go through it and you say, okay, can we fix this? Sure. Can we expand on this? Absolutely. All right. They have a point. We probably, and we shouldn't have sent that in with a reference that was from the 1700s. We probably could have found something on a physiologic process that we've learned something about since 1752. So we can do that. And that's where that relationship, because remember, the mentor has something invested as well. Mentors, you chose them because they know something, right? That's one of the big reasons we look to a mentor. We choose a mentor because they know stuff we don't know. They have skills we don't have. And that's what we want to do. But one of the many reasons we do that, especially if we are taking a new job, if we're taking a new management job, a new leadership position, something like that, that mentor has been in the system, they understand the system, they understand how systems work. Because frequently when we're just starting our journey in our careers, we know this, right? Because that's our experience. Of course that's what we know. And one of the best things a mentor does is takes you by the scruff of the neck and brings you back and says, let's look at the whole system. And that's so valuable. That is an incredibly valuable thing. And then they'll help you understand what to look for in that system. Maybe who to talk to understand the system more. And that who to talk to and how to find out is the network part. Expanding your network. Again, a mentor, because they've been around a while, you chose them because they've been around a while. One of the reasons you work as a mentor is because, remember, they know stuff, they have skills you want to develop, and they know people you don't know. And that, once again, is extremely valuable. I've seen a lot of small groups here at this conference, and it's very clear that individuals who have not been here before or who haven't done a presentation before is kind of buddied up with someone who has been here before, who has done a presentation before. Again, that may not be a mentoring relationship, but is that not a mentoring behavior? Relationships are built on behaviors. And we can all demonstrate behaviors whether we have a formal mentoring relationship with someone or not. And I think that's important. I told Jennifer this when we were talking about the conversation yesterday. There is a phrase that I want gone, period, out, ablated. Do you get the impression I don't like this phrase that I'm going to tell you? Nurses eat their young. I want it gone. Is anybody with me? Because the more we repeat that phrase, the more we reinforce it. And it hurts my soul every time I see it. Every time I see it, every time I hear it. So raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I promise. I will never. Again. Ever. Say. Nurses eat their young. So help me. ANNA. You're committed. All right. The other thing that a mentor does very effectively is they essentially provide a buffer for their protege. When a mentor and a mentee are working on something together, it doesn't really matter what it is, a project, building skills, whatever. It's very important that the mentor provides some level of protection for that mentee. Because remember, in this relationship, the goal of the relationship is to help develop and help you build on areas that you wanted to grow. Again, a relationship example from what I'd done. I was mentoring a new faculty, and she and I had a specific piece, and one of the things she wanted to do is, she said, it's important to me because I see my career in faculty. She said, I have never, ever spoken in front of a group. And so we decided that she was going to do, in the undergraduate program in which we were teaching, that she was going to do, because I was primary faculty in that course, she was going to do a 30-minute lecture. And I said, pick your topic. You know what's in the course. You've got we're going to do it for 30 minutes. Take something that you like, that you know, you feel like you know, and that you'll be comfortable talking about. So she chose her topic. And of course, in her nervousness, because remember, she's never done this before, whatever, she'd practiced it, we did fine. In the lecture, she misspoke. And how many of you have ever, when you've been, stick with me long enough, you'll hear it all the time. So how many of you have ever done a talk or taught someone something and you said the wrong word? Instead of hypo, you said hyper. Instead of hyper, you said hypo. You called the left side of the heart the right side of the heart, and everybody's going, I'm pretty sure the transposition of the great vessels is a congenital anomaly. It's not supposed to happen that way. So she misspoke. I knew she knew that. However, by misspeaking, she confused the audience. She confused the students. And so, as she went to the next page of the slide, I said, let's stop for just a minute. And I said, students, I think it's understandable, Susan misspoke. And I said, Susan, go back to your notes. Because I think you just said that wrong. Remind us how X went to Y. She went back to her notes. She was very embarrassed. I said, just take a second. And this is in front of the students. And she found it. She said, she apologized. She made the recommendation. I said, thank you very much. Everybody good? Everybody was good. We moved on. I protected her. Because what were the students going to do if we let that error stand? They were not going to be accepting. It was going to decrease her credibility. They were not going to be okay with that. And we didn't want the error out there, but importantly, the students needed to understand that it's okay to make and fix a mistake. So it worked out beautifully. She appreciated it because it was just hey, I misspoke. It's going to happen. Don't worry about it. You fix it. You fix it. And then last but not least, acceptance and confirmation. in that relationship, it's important that a mentor accept you for who you are and where you are and be affirming of your growth and the work that you're putting forth. A mentor can offer expertise. Isn't that one of the reasons you went to them? Because they know stuff you don't know? They have skills you don't have? So that expertise is important. Are all mentors role models? What do you think of as what do you think of when you think of a role model? What's the phrase most of us would use? I want to be like you someday. I want to be you someday. I want to, that's the kind of thing. And after the mentor says, "Oh, please don't be," it's that idea of there are behaviors that you exhibit. There are things that you do that your mentee says, I want to be like that. I like those behaviors. I want to emulate those behaviors, and that's really good. Now, it's very important, though, that we understand that not all role models are mentors. So, and we know that. Certainly, as we've been talking about, a mentor can help you get there. They're going to inspire you. And by inspiring you to reach those goals and to hit those goals, sometimes it's a, come on, you can do it. I know you're headed in the right direction. Let's just keep on going. And sometimes it's also when you're meeting with your mentor and the mentor says, it was my understanding that we were going to move on and you were going to have this ready for us to talk about. It's also helping you meet deadlines and things like that are so valuable as we move along our pathway in our profession. Certainly you want your mentor to be compassionate. Keep the relationship focused on your needs, not my needs, it's your needs as the mentee. And then again, that idea of you know who you are. You know what your areas of growth need to be, and I'm okay with you. There are some times when you're sitting there going, I don't know that this is the person I'm going to go out and have a glass of wine with, but boy, this is someone that I'd like to work with. It's more. It's not. Is a mentorship a friendship? Sometimes yes and sometimes no. It really depends. It really depends. But I do think, and I love this graphic that Dr. Baxley put in, mentors can help your world from spiraling out of control while you're moving forward. Because when we're moving forward in our careers, the road can get a little bumpy. It can have a few side trips, but your mentor can help you bring them together, can help you when you feel like you can't do another thing, when you feel like you're just at wit's end. The mentor is there to help bring you back, to help you affirm, to help remind you what you've accomplished, and to help you remind you where you're headed. And isn't that nice to have somebody do that with you? So, tips for success from a mentor framework. The mentor has to make this relationship a high priority. If you don't have the time, if you don't have the energy, don't do it. Doesn't mean you won't be ready in 6 months or 12 months, but if you don't have the time, don't take it on. And I think that's the responsibility that every mentor has to do. How many of you have mentors have had to say, I would really like to work with you, but I just don't have time right now? You guys are good. Because I know that many mentors do have to say that. And it may be because they're at a transition point in their own career. And so they've got a lot of energy going in that direction. Because they want to be sure that you have enough time. You want to be sure that as a mentor that you communicate in a meaningful way with your mentee. How do they want to communicate? Phone? Email? Do they prefer to meet face to face? How often are you going to meet? Probably one of the mistakes that we'll make in a mentoring relationship is we'll say, well, let me know when you need me. Oh, that's dangerous, especially very early in that relationship. Early in that relationship, set up some time, because the beauty of that time is now you have protected time with your mentee, and that protected time is golden. It's absolutely critical. So make sure that you talk that through. I prefer to meet with my mentees either by phone or in person. Now, phone now also means, through electronic means either through Zoom or e-meeting or something like that. We can do that. But I will tell you that other than, something quick, what about this, a quick answer, I'm not a real fan of email. Part of that is because I get over 100 emails at work a day. And many of you get even more than that. And so I would rather hear the inflection on the phone, see the face. It works better for me as opposed to, once again, testing my typing skills, which are pretty darn good, but I really don't want to test them anymore. It's important that early in the relationship, that the mentor talk with the mentee specifically about trust and confidentiality. That's a big deal. And probably the biggest part of that trust and confidentiality is, in this relationship, what you tell me is confidential, and you can trust me to keep it confidential. If you violate that confidentiality, the relationship has been damaged. Now, this obviously means that you haven't violated anyone's safety. But generally that works. Make it easy for them to ask for help. Help them identify their needs. Have you thought about, what about this? What about that? Are you comfortable with? Those are the kinds of questions. And then how often do they want feedback? How do they want to, and having a sense of how do they receive positive feedback? How do they receive corrective feedback? How do they like to get that? And letting them know that in this relationship, and I think that's the other thing, that in the relationship, it means providing both kinds of feedback. And once again, this is a two-way street. So that when you provide, as a mentor, when you provide feedback to your mentee, you also have to be sure that you elicit feedback from your mentee about how are we doing. And that's probably one of the biggest questions I've asked some of my mentees is, how are we doing? Is the relationship meeting your needs? Is what we're doing meeting your needs? And sometimes they'll say, I feel like I'm not growing fast enough. I feel like I'm not getting there fast enough. Okay, let's talk about, if you're ready to move forward at a faster pace, how could we do that? Let's talk that through. As a pro today, some of the tips for success. Ask for advice and give feedback. We've talked about that. Make sure you share your goals, what your needs are. This isn't the waterfront. This is, what do you need? You go into a mentoring relationship with a specific idea of what you want to do. Be receptive to the recommendations that your mentor makes. It's kind of frustrating as a mentor. You're sitting in there and you're saying, why don't we try this? Why don't we try this? And the mentee says, there are two things that a mentee can do that will, kind of make me take a step back. One is yes, but. If I get a lot of yes, buts, I'm getting a little concerned. And the only reason I start getting concerned is if I'm getting a lot of yes, buts, I don't know enough about you yet. And so that means from my standpoint, I've got to get to know you a little bit more. And sometimes the yes, but is, I don't have time, I work full time, I don't have time, I can't, and it's like, well, let's take a step back and let's rethink what we can accomplish then. Let's see whether or not we're being realistic. The other thing that is of concern on the mentor side is the mentee that agrees and they said, yep, great idea, I'll do exactly that, and they never do it. And they don't do it not because whatever, either they didn't want to or they just didn't think it was a good idea. State that up front. Work it out. Work it out with you. And then if there's a door that's being opened, like a committee to join, to become a part of a working group that's really going to help you build and resolve some of those areas of growth that you wanted to do, be open to it. Do it. Because the whole idea there was to expose you to more in a positive way. Stay open, be realistic, and you're the best person to know whether or not what is happening in this relationship is going to work for you. But you have to be willing to put that time investment in, the time and energy. The mentor is, so are you. But always remember that you're the one responsible for your outcomes. If you're not getting what you need from this relationship, you have two choices as a mentee. One, renegotiate, and that is absolutely appropriate. Absolutely. The other is end the relationship. Do it tactfully and do it kindly. Now, is that a tip for success? I don't know. But I do know that experienced mentors, when someone they've been working with comes to them and says, I just feel like we're not on the same page, and I'm wondering if this is the best relationship for me right now. The experienced mentor will say, okay, are you interested in exploring another individual who might be able to help you? And then once again, what do? You reach into your network as a mentor and you think, is there anybody who could really help? It's not resonating between the two of us. Who could potentially help her or him? How could we do that? Now, can peers be mentors? Peer-to-peer? Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that peers can do in those mentoring behaviors is to be a sounding board, to be supportive. They're going to help you get through. Because sometimes don't you just want to walk into a room and scream your head off? Okay, screaming your head off is a whole lot more fun if there's somebody listening. I find screaming with nobody in the room very unsatisfying. I want somebody to hear that anguish. Stella! We're in New Orleans, I had to do that. They can also provide a little competition for you. You say, let's do this together. Let's see how this would work. Because sometimes having a friend on the same journey you're on, how often have you buddied up with someone? How many of you are buddied up coming to the conference? Okay, if you're like me, I'm buddied up with someone, I have a roommate, thank goodness, because on this journey, if it hadn't been for Beth, I would still be in the lobby trying to figure out how to get to my room. I have to do what at the keypad? Put in your room number. Okay, I can do that. Well, I put my room number in. That's 4 digits. They don't want 4 digits. You probably all figured that out immediately. Thankfully, I had someone with me on the journey. There are some unethical issues within mentoring. It's unethical for the mentor to take credit and to abuse that power. Those are the two that I think are the most damaging. In every relationship, the work, if when you've negotiated who's going to do what, it's the mentee's work. The mentor is the one sitting in the front row with the giant grin on their face while the mentee does whatever, or is sitting in the meeting with nonverbal behaviors that indicate openness and support. That's what the mentor is there. You got to keep it healthy. Now, these are mentoring characteristics, and this was a study that was actually done by Baxley and I think Ibatayo, but definitely Susan did this. And she looked at some of the characteristics. I'm not going to go over all of these because I didn't have the opportunity to talk about the results with Susan. But there's a couple of things I really want you to take a look at. And these are characteristics for research. What are people looking for in a mentor when they are looking for a research mentor? That's the skill they want to develop. And what you can see here in the red is that some of the most important things they needed, top of the list was knowledge at 88%. That makes sense. You don't want to learn how to do research from somebody who doesn't understand research. That's called the blind leading the blind. So that's not good. Competent, available, there's a big one. Collaborative, committed, supportive. Do those match the characteristics that you would be looking for in a mentor, whether it's research or anything? That's a great laundry list of things you'd be looking for. Now, this one, I'm just going to skip it because I can't do it. All right. Now, this was very interesting, is they looked at mentor characteristics, and this was within a healthcare setting. What is scary about this slide is that very few people had mentors. Now, and this is supported by other work that has been done. When you look at, there are some differences in gender and position. In general, even though the numbers are smaller on the gender side, and this was in healthcare, males indicated that the biggest things they wanted in a mentor was knowledge, competence, and resourcefulness. So they wanted somebody who could think outside the box, knew their stuff, and was very competent in what they did. Females also wanted someone who knew what they were doing. They wanted competence, but they wanted to be supportive. They wanted that supportiveness. So I think that says something about the globality of our gender differences. Nurse managers most commonly wanted competence above everything else. And staff nurses wanted someone who would listen. That's very instructive to me. That in that relationship, and at the staff nurse level, one of the biggest things they needed was a listening ear. Now, that's the first step, and then it usually goes from there. One of the questions we identified early is whether or not you have an organization that supports mentoring. And having a culture of mentoring within your organization is one of the first things that will help this relationship be successful. It's absolutely critical. And in order to do that, then, the mentee and the mentor have to understand how that culture works, how that organization works. Is it ready for mentoring? And that really depends on the organization. Some would say that highly bureaucratic and rule-bound organizations may struggle with being in a mentoring culture. Others would say, no, it really doesn't matter that much because, bureaucracy is what it is, but you can still build that organization where individuals help each other grow in an intentioned way. You need lots of different levels. And then do they look at the effects of the success of a mentoring program? If the organization has a mentoring program, does the organization have a way of evaluating the success of that program? Because we know that if we don't evaluate a program, we'll never know whether or not we need to revamp, tweak, whatever with that program. So some of the things that are inclusive or really help. This is a study that was done on a 5-point Likert scale, and it was very important to extremely important. So what were they looking for? Now, once again, if you look at those results, look at the 90s. Extremely important. The organization or the environment had to be supportive of mentoring, absolutely. Had to integrate mentoring into the organizational culture. It was important that it be an overt way to foster professional development. That was very, very high. Was a way to empower their staff and empower the people in the organization. But here was my favorite. At 94%, which is very, very high, administration provides the resources. In an organizational culture that fosters mentoring, organizational resources are placed in that culture to make that happen. And I think that is difficult for some organizations to do, but that's what it takes if you want to be a mentoring culture in your organization. And we know that mentoring cultures breed mentoring relationships. So some of the exemplars are ideal, just some subjective data, some scripted data. This idea of time. The ideal environment means that you have time to be have that relationship and let that relationship happen. When you're going from task to task to task to task and running as fast as you can all day, and at the end of the shift, everybody's out the door, in the car, headed home, what does that tell you about the culture? There's no time for that sharing of ideas, to develop those relationships, to build skills. The protected time for mentoring time being built into the culture. How many of you have been preceptors in your workplace? For some of you, did those precepting relationships become mentoring relationships? There are some common behaviors in precepting and mentoring. However, we have to be very clear, they're not the same thing. But in those organizations where they put a lot of energy into precepting and allow time for precepting and the free flow of information during a precepting relationship, you start thinking about, this is an organization that also has laid the groundwork for mentoring relationships and a mentoring environment. So when you look at that, you think about how could one build a foundation for developing the other. Because not all preceptors are going to be mentors. Not all mentors are going to be preceptors. That's not what I'm saying. But it's the way the culture thinks and the value that it has. And it is frequently about time. As a mentor, those of you that have been mentors, was this time intensive for you? Did it take extra time for you to be a mentor? I'm seeing the heads go this way. Yeah. Was it time gladly given? Not as many nods. But it's an enjoyable relationship. And again, in my relationships, mentoring relationships, I have learned as much from my mentees as I have probably provided for my mentees. They've helped me grow as a professional. So when we rethink mentoring, if you put yourself at the middle, and as we look at that, you're looking at what we want out of mentoring. So the substantial feedback, sponsorship, access to opportunities, that's that one right there. That's a big part of it. Accountability, role modeling, all these things we've talked about. But here's a rethink. Rethinking mentoring, the mentor and the protege. It's a dyad. It's a relationship. So think about this as a relationship when you think about that mentoring. Because if you only think about mentoring as a one-sided thing, or what you're getting or what you're giving, you're missing some of you've only got half the model there. And so I think this is an excellent model. And it looks at advancement. It looks at some of those same things, but allows us to look at them differently. Whoop. Wrong button. So I see my path, but I don't know where it leads. Not knowing where I'm going is what inspires me to travel it. You've got goals and you know where you're headed, but you don't know exactly where it's going to head you, where it's going to land you up. That's okay. That's why you got a mentor. Now, got a pen and paper? Let's just, because this is about mentoring, how to get one and how to be one. So let's take a look. Do you have what it takes to be a mentor? So let's just take a look at these. And I know you can probably read this, but I'm going to read them because if I was sitting in the back of the room, I'd be going. All right. So you get 2 points. Give yourself 2 points if it's a yes, this describes me well. 1 point if you're comfortable providing this activity part of the time. So if you're comfortable with this activity all the time, it's 2 points. If you're comfortable with this activity part of the time, it's 1 point. All right, so I serve as a role model and maintain awareness of what I portray. So either 2 points, 1 point, or 0. It's okay to be 0. So you've got 3 options here. I assist protégés in assessing their personal strengths and weaknesses. So is that pretty close to you for 2 points? Comfortable with that part of the time? That's 1 point. Not at all comfortable with it? 0. I ask reflective questions so that the protégés can come up with their own solutions. 2, 1, or no? I help protégés understand the system and the culture of the organization. Ready to move? Same scale. I keep the relationship focused on the protégé's outcomes. I connect protégés to my professional network and provide opportunities. I provide protection and a buffer. I guide the protégés to see potential threats to the outcomes. I help protégés, skip one. I offer compassion by supporting having a supportive environment. I help my protégés explore options without providing final solutions. So it's like a multiple choice test. They get options, but no answer. And last, I demonstrate acceptance for my protégé for who they are. Now, add up all your points. And nobody needed a calculator, right? Because I know there's an app for that. All right, so if you had 15 to 20, but if your total was 15 to 20, you are an engaged and seasoned mentor. You're comfortable with being a mentor in almost all situations. While this is good, realize that you have to work to maintain a meaningful relationship with your protégé and would benefit from energizing that relationship. If your score was 10 to 14, so 10 to 14, you understand that mentoring is important, but you need more experience and assistance to be able to assist your protégé. Your willingness to search for key ways to mentor makes you closer to be a successful mentor-protege relationship than you think. So you're almost there. 9 to 5, or 5 to 9, I should have done it the other way, 5 to 9 points. You're a relatively new mentor. You're enthusiastic and would like to learn more so you can assist your protege to reach their goals. So you can learn. And if you got less than 5 points, you may not be a mentor at this time, or you might be a protege. But search for the tools to provide you with the tools for the future when you want to go from being a protege to being a mentor. One of the best ways of becoming a mentor and being a successful mentor is to be a successful mentee or protege. If you learn from the best, you're going to be the best. Thank you so much for your attention. I think we have a few minutes for questions if you have any. Jennifer said we have 3 questions.
We got about 3 minutes. Anybody? Yep, hold on.
More of a comment, Mary. I have an acquaintance I ran into recently, and her daughter graduated from college with a BSN in the spring. So she's a new grad, and she was telling me about her experience. And she was a few weeks into her orientation. She was concluding a week with her preceptor. At the end of the week, her preceptor said, "Are you sure you went to nursing school?"
Okay, so that's...
So I did say that phrase I can't say anymore to my acquaintance, and I just said that's awful. Somebody should be mentoring her, not chastising her. You know, she's brand new. She went to a really, really good program. I think she's probably very bright. And I suggested that she find her orientation coordinator, educator, whatever the title is. And I said, and she's in a residency program. I said to share that because they need that feedback. Not only does that person that supposed preceptor need the feedback, but the people organizing the orientation need it as well.
Absolutely. I agree.
I was aghast.
I agree completely. I think one of the things, remember that when we are working with someone who is new, whether it's a mentee, a preceptee, or whatever, every time we provide feedback, we are molding the way they think and the way they behave. And I think that is incredibly important. There are so many ways of saying, first off, that would be the other thing. Are you sure you went to nursing school? No, I got my diploma and never passed the NCLEX. Yeah, that's why you're working here. That is an incredibly A, unkind, but B, unprofessional. And I think those are the kinds of things that, as each other, if we overhear things like that, bring the preceptor aside and have a chat. That's rough, because that's not the way we want. That's not the way. That's just another way of saying that phrase that you promised you'd never say again. It's exactly what that is. That is very disheartening. Very disheartening. The other thing is, and I'm not religious by any means, but I remember something in the Bible about he who doesn't have sin cast the first stone. Isn't there something like that in the Bible someplace? Not that I'm religious or anything, but here's the thing. How many of you have showed up at work one day and it wasn't your best day and you're pretty sure you took your stupid LA pill? Stupid long acting? Or sustained release, take your pick. So there are days that we're not at the top of our game. And you hope it's very short-lived, and you're hoping that you didn't take the LA or the SR, and that you're going to come right back and it's going to be okay. But we all have days that we aren't as sharp as we would like, and we want folks to deal with us kindly and tactfully when we demonstrate that behavior.